Now, there's a new anti-xenophobia group called Kopanang Africa. It aims to raise awareness around the matter. And Spokesperson Ferron Pedro joins me now to discuss, of course, its unpacking of human cost of xenophobic actions and solidarity with victims. Ferron, thank you so much for your time this morning, and good morning to you. First of all, let's start here. What do you make of, the incidents that we've been seeing, whether it's through protest action, some even turning violent, clashes, torching of shags? This, of course, we're reading and learning that it's at least some groups saying that, undocumented foreign nationals are taking up space in their jobs within the country.
Well, in South Africa, we're sitting on a powder keg with 70% of people unemployed, 70% of young people unemployed or not in educational training. The expanded definition of unemployment now is 49.9%. We've seen, or 46.9%. We've seen cuts in budget spending for schools, for public health services, and inequality is still a huge problem, with South Africa being the most unequal country in the world. So we're sitting on a powder keg. Social tensions are escalating, and it's not surprising to us that migrants are being targeted as by certain groups of people are being targeted as scapegoats for all these problems, especially seeing that politicians are inflaming the situation with false information and anti-immigrant rhetoric. So this is a toxic mix which will result in the kind of actions we've seen.
Yeah,
and of course the opportunistic elements,
right,
like Operation Dudula and so on.
And then just going back to your point, Ferron, about that toxic mix. I mean, I've seen the frustration from certain groups, even some South Africans, who have almost supported these protests that are going on around the country, where the likes of Operation Dudula go to these different small businesses and want to see documentation from business owners. And if you're not documented, some groups even going as far as either confiscating your goods or warning you to not return. Some of the conversations, or even these hashtags, I'm sure you can look up, are saying we are not xenophobic, we are not xenophobic. Stop sort of imposing the word xenophobia of us. So I suppose my question is, where do we then see that intersection of victimhood, of policy, but also of solidarity when it comes to matters that involve South Africans as well as illegal foreign nationals in the country?
Okay, so I just want to correct you around the idea of illegal foreign nationals. I think the language is important, right? So you can have undocumented people, but no human being is illegal, right? So and the fact is, I mean, the problem with the issue around documentation is that we've seen the refugee office in closed for 2 years. We've seen Department of Home Affairs not even able to make sure that all people born in South Africa have documentation, right? So most undocumented people in South Africa are actually born in South Africa, and there's such a huge backlog. If you speak to any migrant who is undocumented, they will explain to you how difficult and painful it is not to have documentation. It's incredibly difficult to be able to get work, to be able to get healthcare, to be able to get their children into schools and so on. So it's a complete misdirection of the problem. People are really, really suffering, but then looking at scapegoating migrants who, by the way, studies show migration into South Africa creates jobs, right? The figures that they've shown around or that people have presented around criminal statistics are totally false and overstated. Right. And so there's a misinformation.
Where do you think that the common use of illegal foreign migrants comes from? Where do you think that phrase then comes from?
Right. So a few things. One, I mean, Verwoerd said he wasn't racist. He just believed in equal and separate development, right? The way that right-wing forces always frame and formulate their racism and their hatred can often be quite palatable, right? But we have to look at what is really happening. So what is happening to migrants, right, or foreign nationals? They have informal stores, right? And people like Operation Dula are going to, and groups under that name are going to these stores and saying, if you don't pay us, you're not allowed to operate.
Right.
So they're being extorted, they're being harassed and attacked. And so these are very opportunistic elements. It's not a civic organization checking up on the documentation of undocumented people. That is just a cover for what's really happening, which is criminal and hateful activities. And of course, when you're asking around who is or why is it becoming popular, they're just an easy target, right? Undocumented people are an easy target. And so people are going towards the path of least resistance, when really we should be targeting the state. We should be targeting multinational corporations. We should be targeting the people who have the wealth, who are exploiting, who are corrupt, who are exploiting and whose policies don't work, and who are exploiting the working class and poor communities and actually causing the problems that we're seeing in our communities today.
Well, I appreciate your time this morning and speaking to us about this matter, Ferron. Thank you so much for joining us right here on the South African Morning. That is the anti-xenophobia group, Kopanang Africa spokesperson, Ferron Pedro. Thank you for your time this morning.